That's Ronnie on his 10th birthday.
Oh, he's sure a fine-looking boy.
Thanks. Well, as I was saying, he's always made good grades in school, had good marks in conduct.
Must take after his mother's side of the family, huh?
No, his father's. But seriously, we've been mighty proud of him. I guess that's one reason this thing has hit us so hard.
Fred, are you certain it's as serious as you think?
Well, Miss Branson, that's Ronnie's teacher, said that it was the most unfortunate thing that could have happened in the school at this time. The first she knew of it was when Ronnie came to see her one day at noon.
Miss Branson?
Yes, Ronnie?
Miss Branson, could I have a different space in the locker room?
Well, I suppose you could have, but what's wrong with the space you have now?
Oh, nothing's the matter with it, Miss Branson. It's just that it's right next to David's.
And what's wrong with that? If I remember correctly, you and David wanted it that way.
That's right, Miss Branson, we did. But you see, we're not friends anymore.
Not friends anymore? Why, what happened?
Nothing's happened. It's just that I don't want to have a locker space next to a and all the other kids feel the same way about it, too, Miss Branson.
How do you know they do, Ronnie?
Because we've talked about it. And we're going to do something about it, too. We're going to show that David and a few others like him that there's not any place in this school for them.
Why, Ronnie.
Well, that's the story, Pastor. And Miss Branson says that it might easily lead to serious trouble for the school.
I can well imagine that it might. I mean, the children set one against another, and then the parents will be taking it up.
That very thing has actually happened, Dr. Goodrich. Why, some of the parents have already called on the principal. The school board has had a special session, and Miss Branson has been to see Margaret and me twice. We feel terrible about this thing, particularly knowing that it was Ronnie who started it.
But why did he start it, Fred? I mean, apparently Ronnie and David had always been friends.
Oh, yes, they've been very good friends.
And David had done nothing to hurt that friendship?
No, if he had, Ronnie would have had something to say about it.
Then what's it all about? I mean, things like this just don't happen.
No, I guess not.
For instance, where did Ronnie pick up that expression, I mean, you seldom hear that anymore.
Oh, sure you do. I've used it myself occasionally.
You have?
Yes, every now and then.
Ever use it around Ronnie?
Well, could be, I guess.
In what way?
Well, we used to have a butcher who was a Jew, and a time or two when the meat was tough, I might have said a thing or two. And then there was a family down the street, a Jewish family that had a dog, but Ronnie was at such a young age, I'm sure that didn't impress him. Or did it? Wait a minute. One evening, I was reading in the living room. Ronnie was doing his homework when Joe Rankin called me on the phone. You mean that actually had nerve enough to try to barge into the most exclusive men's club in town? Why, of course, you blackballed him, didn't you? Sure thing. You know, I can't understand why if these people, if they must live in America, at least don't keep to themselves. Why, certainly, old man. All right. I'll be there then. Goodbye.
Daddy, what is a
Oh, that's just another way of saying Hebrew, son. It's short for a Jew.
Is David a
Well, not necessarily David, particularly, just any Jew.
But David is a Jew, isn't he?
Yes, David's a Jew.
What does blackball mean, Daddy?
Blackball? See here, Ronnie, now don't bother me anymore.
But, Daddy, you said you'd always tell me about these things, man to man.
Sure, I know, Ronnie, but there's some things that are hard to explain, and perhaps it's better to wait until you get a little bit older before you understand. I didn't think any more about it at the time. I just supposed it was the end of the matter.
But it wasn't. It never is when you say something like that in front of a child. They may not give any indication of listening or may not say anything at the time, but they are always absorbing ideas.
Absorbing ideas? I never heard of such a thing. Could be that Ronnie has absorbed my dislike for the Jews.
Why have you disliked them, Fred?
Oh, no particular reason, I guess. I've just always felt that way.
But you haven't. It's just come so gradually and over such a long period of time that you can't tell how or when it started. The truth is, of course, you too have absorbed ideas. The attitudes of those around you became your attitudes. And then, in turn, your attitudes became Ronnie's. And so the process goes on and on and on.
Well, why do we do it, Pastor?
Well, the psychologists tell us that we do it because we like the feeling of superiority it gives us. One of the simplest ways of building ourselves up is to find someone upon whom we can look down. This ministers to our pride and gives us the illusion of prestige, feeds our ego. I don't mean that we do it consciously, but that's the explanation, nevertheless.
It's a little hard to take, isn't it? This whole thing has given me a jolt, and quite a jolt.
I don't doubt that, Fred.
You know, I've heard you preach time and time again about prejudice, about all the harm it's doing in the world, how communism thrives on it, how undemocratic it is, how unchristian. And you know, it never entered my mind that you might be preaching to me.
Well, we human beings are like that, Fred. It's a fact that people who are prejudiced often think of themselves as unprejudiced, even though their attitudes reveal otherwise. That's another reason it's so hard to get at this thing.
How are we going to get at it, Pastor? My particular brand of it. What am I going to do about Ronnie, about David, about the school? What is the answer?
I think, Fred, since you've come to see this whole thing as you do, that you'll be able to bring about a change in Ronnie. It may not be easy, and it may take some time, for we do like to hold on to our prejudices. That goes for children, too. But on the other hand, Ronnie has been reflecting your attitudes. And as soon as he is certain that you have changed, I believe you'll begin to see a difference in him. But as for that school situation, though...
Yeah, something's got to be done about that right now.
I think you can do something about it, Fred, with Ronnie's help. You'll have a talk with him right away, of course.
Yes, of course. It'll be about the toughest thing I've ever tackled, Pastor, but I can't see that there's anything for me to do but tell him man to man that he was right all along with his friendship for David, and that it was his dad who was all wet.
That reminds me of something, Fred. You know, one day Jesus took a little child and set him in the midst of an arguing crowd. And then he said these words, "Except ye become as little children, ye cannot enter the kingdom of heaven."
I don't get it. What's the connection?
Just this, Fred. Jesus was saying in different words much what you have just said. He was saying that we ought to become like the children. But we've taken that and turned it all about, and have thought that it was our job to make the children become like us.
By George, I'd never thought of it like that.
But it's the answer, Fred, to our whole problem of human prejudice. For children aren't born with it. It's been proved again and again that they have no natural prejudice of race or creed or class until
they pick it up from a chump of a father.
Well, let's say that until they pick it up from somebody. But don't you see, Fred, our hope lies in this very fact. Don't you see what we'd be up against if children were born with it? We'd be working against human nature. But as it is, human nature's on our side. For God has not put it into the heart of little children to look down on or discriminate against their fellows. Our hope lies in this simple fact, that you've got to be taught to hate.
Yeah. And I've done my share of the teaching. And it's pretty ugly.
Good morning, Ronnie.
Good morning, Miss Branson.
You're early this morning.
Miss Branson,
Yes?
could I have my old locker space back?
Your old locker? You mean the one next to David?
Uh-huh.
Why, of course you can, Ronnie. Did you and David patch things up?
Not yet, but we will. At least I'm going to ask David if he'll be my friend.
Oh, I think that's wonderful, Ronnie. It's the best news I've had in a long time. What caused the change?
My dad and me, we had a long talk last night. You know, man to man. And, well, I'd like to have my old locker space back, Miss Branson.
I've been thinking since I talked with Fred that day that it's pretty terrible what happens to the raw material of human nature sometimes. A child ready to look upon people about him not as parts of a group or a race or a class, but simply as persons, is taught to fear them or look down upon them or even to hate them, not because of what they are, but because of the church or the race or the group to which they belong. And this kind of teaching may not call for words on our part, for they catch our attitudes. They copy our spirit. But, as I said to Fred, the fact that children are not born with prejudice means that there's always hope. Human nature is on our side. Theoretically, in just one generation, we could change the whole pattern of this un-American, undemocratic, un-Christian prejudice. For children who have to be taught to hate can also be taught love and goodwill and respect for their fellows. It could happen in one generation, but it must begin with you and me. The words of the prophet Isaiah can be fulfilled upon earth. These words, "And all thy children shall be taught of the Lord, and great shall be the peace of thy children."